Hello and welcome back to an American McGee's Knife Only. This is part 2, and now you're going to witness how I failed the challenge. Well, okay, not yet, but you will see later on how I failed this challenge, but for the time being, let's just continue with what's going on. Starting off where we last left off, this is the Mad Hatter's laboratory. The first part of the laboratory section is the maze, which is just this mirror maze full of automatons hiding behind some of the glass mirrors. The automatons are the first new enemy that we'll be seeing this second part, and I can safely say they are quite annoying. The automatons have multiple attacks. Their gas attack, which can hit you even if you're nowhere near it, which is kind of annoying. They have this swinging arm attack, which is annoying. They have this homing skull missile thing like the Revenant does, but you know, it's just as annoying. So what else can make the automatons a bit of a struggle? Well, with a knife only challenge, you're causing very minimal damage. You have to chuck the knife multiple times in order to take down even a single automaton. This section took ages to do. I had to keep on dodging the missile attacks they kept firing at me and then throw the knife. Hide, throw the knife, hide, throw the knife. That was basically my tactic. I eventually got through it, and then I saw some Phantasmagoria. Luckily, they give you lots of health, even if they can't do anything to you, so you can just kill them to get health back. But then again, the automatons also give you loads of health, so that's a given benefit. After you go through this section, you then enter the Nightmare Spider section. Here, you have to throw the knife at some clocks, and the Nightmare Spiders can be a bit of a pain to deal with. They have this acid attack, which is kind of annoying, but the most annoying attack they have is the leaping attack. They will leap at you and bite you, and this can disorientate the screen and make things troublesome. However, I did find out that you can hide by the beds. The Nightmare Spiders sometimes struggle to get past certain objects due to how large they are, and as a result they sort of get stuck. So you can just throw the knife at them, or even if you're feeling brave enough, just slash them with the knife. It's very simple to do, but they do take a few more hits to kill, and well, it can be annoying. Once you smashed all the clocks, you can go progress through the level. This is where you meet some more dreadful boojums. Same as before, just throw the knife and try and avoid their scream attack. However, their scream attack can throw you off the arena, which can be very, very annoying. So one of the other things that I had problems with wasn't actually in the game itself, but rather my recording. You see, every so often my recorder just failed to record some sections, which meant that a lot of the footage that you're seeing is either a replay of what could have happened or just nothing at all, because unfortunately the game recorder just failed to work half the time. So that was really annoying, and it was even more annoying when I had to face Tweedledee and Tweedledum, an entire boss fight which I was saving up for, a boss fight which I wanted to record and show the proof of, and guess what? The recorder failed to record it, so I had to redo the whole fight. The first time I did the fight, I actually didn't die once. The second I did the fight, it was a little bit of a disaster. So let's talk about Tweedledee and Tweedledum, shall we? Tweedledee and Tweedledum are pretty easy bosses, actually. The best thing to do is just run around the arena and throw the knife at them. It does take a lot of knife throws, but eventually they do go down. I prioritize the bigger Tweedle twin because that one is far more dangerous than the smaller one. He can drop down and cause heavy amounts of damage. One of the most annoying factors of American McGee's is that sometimes Alice, when she gets hit, she will stay still and just take the abuse, and as a result, staying still after being hit, other enemies can then hit her multiple times, which then causes a stun lock, which is just downright annoying. It gets more annoying later on, but for the Tweedle fight it can be a little bit annoying if the big Tweedle smashes down onto the ground and Alice is stun locked, which results in the other Tweedles, or the Tweedle clones, coming in and killing you. All you need to do is concentrate your fire on the Tweedles themselves, not the clones, and once you do so, they do eventually go down, and you can meet the Mad Hatter, where he will drop you down below. We navigate through Hatter's laboratory some more. We face more automatons, some Nightmare Spiders, and boojums, but luckily you can pretty much get rid of all of them with the knife throws, and I already mentioned that you just have to hide behind an object, then throw the knife, then hide, and in some cases run backwards to throw the knife. You then meet some Arch Hare and Dormouse, and after having a conversation with them, you then progress on to try and face the Hatter. The Hatter boss fight. Let's talk about the suffering that I endured during the Hatter boss fight. The Mad Hatter boss fight took 30 minutes for me. This was a painful boss fight, to say the very least. You see, during this boss fight, you often have to run around and throw the knife, because the Mad Hatter will run up to you and slap you, he'll fire his finger gun at you, and he'll throw tea at you. And every so often the Mad Hatter will shrink down, which will spawn 2 automatons, which will just be annoying. Now the first phase of the boss fight isn't too bad, because the Mad Hatter doesn't cause too many of deadly attacks. However, the more damaged the Mad Hatter becomes, the more harder the fight becomes. The Mad Hatter will become increasingly more aggressive, and every so often the Mad Hatter will hit you in such a way that will cause Alice to once again become stun locked, which then results in the Mad Hatter just mutilating you in every sense of the word. It is a truly painful experience. However, it is possible. You can throw the knife and defeat the Mad Hatter once and for all, and you can just play on through. So, we're now in the land of the fire and brimstone. We're going to face the Jabberwock at some point. And during this first few sections, it isn't too bad. The imps aren't so much of a struggle. But then you meet the Jabber Spawn. The Jabber Spawn are a little bit annoying. At this point in the game, everything is trying to kill you, and there are so many enemies at this point. The Jabber Spawn are annoying in the sense that you can avoid them. You can throw the knife at them, but they have this horrible hit scan electric attack, which just is infuriating. Sometimes they can leap at you and then hit you with their tail or claws, and it can just increase the annoying factor. But what's worse is that even if you kill them, they don't give you much meta essence in return. So you could lose a huge chunk of health and only get a sliver back. It's kind of unfair in a way, but luckily you can basically hide behind objects and throw knives at them, and sometimes, or a lot of the time, they do get stuck on each other. In fact, another factor that can make things a little bit easier for you is the enemy infighting. It's not enemy infighting in the sense that Doom, where, you know, enemies will just actively ignore you and try and kill each other. Enemy infighting in this game, it results when an enemy hits the other one and can actually kill or harm the other enemy. And the Jabber Spawn do this quite a lot. They use their hit scan attack, but they end up hitting each other or another enemy, which can actually make life a lot easier for you. The other annoying enemies are obviously the boo jumps. Once again, you get a load of them, and they are just annoying. Luckily, once again, if you get them to scream at each other or get another enemy to hit them, you can actually let the other enemies take out themselves. And obviously there are the lava snarks. Lava snarks are just annoying. They can drag you into the lava, or they can spit a fireball at you, which can take off a considerable amount of health. This is more annoying if you're trying to avoid fights, which is what I try to do. As I try to avoid as many fights as possible, I ended up getting hit by these things, and it just infuriated me. Before you can even fight the Jabberwock, you then have to face a bunch of Jabber Spawn. They are guarding the Jabberwock, and as much as I'd like to say you can just jump and run past, you can't. You are forced to fight at least one of them to clear out the way, and that's what I had to do. I had to hide behind the rock and jump and throw the knife. Jump and throw the knife and get rid of the Jabber Spawn one by one. As long as you get rid of at least one or two of them, you can then bypass the imps and the other Jabber Spawn. You can just run straight on through to the boss fight. Oh dear, the Jabberwock. Luckily, this first Jabberwock fight, you don't actually need to fight the Jabberwock. However, the Jabberwock is quite possibly the toughest fight in the entire game. And I hated this first match. This first match, you have to run away from the Jabberwock at least for 3 minutes. I ended up timing it because I wanted to see how long you had to last with this thing. And I went into the cheats at one point just to see how long you had to wait, and I counted, and it turns out it's 3 minutes. After 3 minutes, you can then progress on through with the game, but for this sake, I ended up doing it legitimately, and by doing it legitimately, I either died by the Jabberwock's attacks or the Jabber Spawn that kept spawning over and just leaping and killing me, and it was just annoying. However, luckily, the Jabberwock can, in fact, hit its own spawn, and by hitting its own spawn, it actually helps you get a lot of health back. So, with the Jabberwock fight, I won't lie, I died a lot of times. However, I didn't even include this in my boss fighting collection if you've gone to my channel, because it isn't really a boss fight, it's more of a survival. And that's what happened. I survived for the 3 minutes, and it was through luck and RNG that I ended up not losing too much health, that I ended up being able to progress through with the game, by which point we return back to the So here is a bit of an awkward situation. To progress to Queen of Hearts land, you have to blow open a wall. And here you are met by a bunch of card guards. These card guards aren't the card guards you met earlier, where they were easy to kill, but rather much tougher enemies. These are the heart card guards and the spade card guards, who are just incredibly annoying and powerful. They have explosive homing range missiles, basically, or homing range hearts, I guess you could say, that can cause a considerable amount of damage to Alice, and sometimes even stun lock her, which is just even more annoying. So as soon as you clear out those guys, you then have to do something which is just very awkward. You see, in order to progress through, you have to use the Jabberwock Eye Staff. And the Jabberwock Eye Staff is the only way you can get through this wall. Unless you somehow glitch your way through, which you can't, it is genuinely impossible to progress with the game unless you use the Jabberwock Eye Staff. So I'm not going to class this as a fail, per se, because this is something that isn't an enemy, but rather, an object. And so I used the Jabberwock Eye Staff to open up the wall, and I went on through to the next area. And now we enter the part of the game which I can quite literally call absolute hell. This is the Majestic Maze. The Majestic Maze is the first of the maze areas, I guess you could say, which is just... So, for one thing, enemies respawn in this area. They can just come out of nowhere, they can be behind you, they can be in front of you, they can come from the side, they can come from pretty much anywhere. To make matters worse, these are all tough enemies. So if you're going to use the knife, you have to hope that they're not all together, which unfortunately is something that does happen a lot. You see, there are certain areas in the Majestic Maze where there's a bunch of enemies all cramped together, whether that's a bunch of boojums, a bunch of car guards, and a bunch of Jabba spawn. It's just infuriating. So the first part of the maze isn't too bad. You can clear out the car guards by hiding behind or running backwards and throwing the knife every so often. They eventually die, and luckily the heart car guards in particular give you a good chunk of health back. However, then you go to a underground area which is filled with Jabba spawn. Once again, they're easy to kill. You can just hide behind the walls and just keep throwing the knife. And there's another added benefit: some of the enemies can't move particular areas. They are guarding or patrolling a certain section, and that's it. They cannot go anywhere further or anywhere else other than that one little section. So apart from that was fine. And then you get to the bit where you need to Insane Shard to stand on the platform so you can pause time and go through the portal. Before you get there is a billion enemies just waiting to kill you. Once again, the best force of tactic was to either get them to infight, where they accidentally kill each other, which luckily enough the car guards can actually do. They can blow each other up and even blow up at the other enemies, or you can just run away, try and throw the knife at them one by one and kill them off like that. And that was essentially what happened. I tried to get them to infight, and some of them did die to their own projectiles, but others I had to run backwards and just throw the knife and hope to God nothing else spawned behind me. But this was just the beginning of what's to come, and quite frankly, what's to come is absolutely horrible. The next section is a short little break section in which you have to go through a boojum hell, essentially. Now, the idea of airborne terror having nothing but boojums was quite terrifying. However, this actually proved to be quite an easy section. The boojums you can easily kill in 3 knife throws, and that's fine. And some of the boojums, because of the way how old this game is, they can actually get trapped on the platforms, which can allow you just to slice them apart. And hey, that's fine. They can get stuck. You can slice them. Some of them you can even avoid, so that's an added benefit. And yeah, you just go through this level pretty easily. There's nothing really to worry about. After a relatively calm level, we then go back to the mazes, and this one is probably far worse than the previous. In this one, you have to go down into a sewer tunnel and eventually unlock another area to get up above and walk across the wall, where you have to pull a lever and then go into a portal. This can be easier said than done. On normal circumstances, this is a very easy section. You just go through it and that's it. However, here it is less so. You are forced to fight a bunch of snarks, which can be really annoying, but luckily they are the easiest enemy here, so that's nothing to worry about. What you have to worry about is the car guards, who can just blow you to smithereens. Once again, try and use infighting to your advantage, or do what I did, and that was to basically run past everyone and just hope for the best. And that worked out quite well for a little bit. You see, it's not just the car guards, but you also have automatons and obviously boojums, and then there's also the jabber spawn. So everything is just trying to kill you by this point. There's almost no way of avoiding every single fight, and you have to try and kill things as much as possible. Luckily, you do have the stopwatch, and this stopwatch is quite possibly one of the most useful items in the game, because you can just stop time and go ahead with the level. But unfortunately, you can only use it once, and it doesn't last too long. This can be a bit of a problem, but it can also be a bit of an advantage, as long as you time it right. Get it? Time it. In this case, I tried timing it near towards the end of the level. You see, I kept trying to time it in such a way that I could try and pull the lever and just avoid all the enemies that are trying to kill you, because there's so many, and eventually you just go through the pool. However, I kept timing it a little bit too early, and I ended up getting bombarded by a bunch of enemies. This go to a point where I ended up just killing off the first few enemies that I saw, killing off a few car guards and some of the boojums, and progressing a little bit closer every time before eventually I timed it, went and pulled the lever and jumped down, where the enemies pretty much sprang back to life, but luckily I just got in through the pool just in time. We get another relatively calm level. This level is pretty easy to explain. You have to go through each pipe, you have to basically drown this certain area in sewage water and open up one of the pipes to go through a portal. However, along the way you get a bunch of snarks. And because of how much damage I took in the last level, I hardly had any health. I literally had zilch. So I had to kill the first few snarks while avoiding their spit damage, and luckily I managed to do so, and I ended up getting some health back. Eventually I just went through the whole level like normal, because you use the knife anyway, and yeah, there's nothing much to talk about. It's pretty easy to explain. I did the level, that's it. Labyrinth's Revenge is one of my favorite levels usually, but in this case I hated it. I hated it with a passion. Doing knife only on this level was awful. It was just absolutely awful. You are faced with lava snarks, you are faced with automatons, you are faced with car guards, you are faced with loads of things, and it's just hell. It is truly hell. There's jabber spawn, there's boojums, and to make matters worse, this is one of the longer levels, and it beat me a lot. It beat me a lot. However, through very slow progress, which took over 2 hours, by the way, I ended up getting through this level, but it was a painful slog, to say the very least, and I was able to get through by using the stopwatch at one point. This one point was where there was a bunch of enemies, because I didn't want to fight them, so I just used it and went past them. It was horrible. It was truly horrible, but worse is about to come. We then get a relatively peaceful level. This peaceful level is essentially going through some clockworks. It's nothing much to say. You usually just go through this level anyway, like normal, so you can go through this. However, we are now about to get to the moment where I failed this challenge. This moment being the Jabberwock boss fight. This boss fight made me rage quit so many times. It took me days to do this fight. I just couldn't handle it at all. The Jabberwock second phase, or the second boss fight with the Jabberwock, or the actual boss fight with the Jabberwock, is the hardest in the game. For one thing, the Jabberwock can fly, and when he flies, he can basically cover the entire area with fire as he's tracking you down. This is just unfair and annoying, because it can basically kill you in one hit. And speaking of one-hit kills, he can shoot a eyeball, laser, missile thing, whatever, into you, and he can kill you in one hit by using that splash damage. This fight was stressful. I tried to do it. I tried to throw the knife at him, and every time I did, I saved the game, because I knew how horrible this fight is usually. And every time I did, he just got me. He either set fire to the entire stage, which just killed me, and it was just... I hated it. I truly hated this fight. I truly hated it, and it got so bad to the point that I gave up after a while. I genuinely could not finish this fight. There was almost no way of doing it without just losing all your health. Mainly because the meta essence in this level, or this boss fight, doesn't spawn regularly. It takes a while, and it's just not enough. It's not enough for the amount of damage you take. Maybe it was my fault to put on Nightmare to begin with, but my god, this was just horrible. this boss fight was truly horrible. And in the end, I basically gave up on it. I gave up on this fight. I could not complete this challenge. And by giving up, I essentially put on God mode and sat there slashing at him. And even with the knife on God mode, just slashing him when he couldn't hurt me, it just took ages. How the hell was I going to do this without cheats? And okay, truly, it is possible to defeat the Jabberwock with knife only, but my god, was this section just so annoying. Oh, but it gets even worse. Now we are at the Queen of Hearts' castle, and after the dreadful boss fight with the Jabberwock, I decided to disable the cheats and just play it normally, pretend that everything was going fine. However, what I forgot was the fact that this level, you had to go around the border of the castle as car guards were spawning in relentlessly. And these weren't the easy car guards, these were the hard ones. These were the tough ones that had explosive damage. The first set was enough to make me die at least 5 or so times, I can't remember. Luckily, I was able to kill them all at one point by throwing the knife at them or letting them blow each other off, which actually happened quite a few times. With some careful dodging, I was able to avoid some of the projectiles, but in other cases I got hit by them and lost a chunk of my health. After a while, I progressed on through the board of the castle, and luckily there is this one section in which you can grab a mirror. By grabbing the mirror, you can just bypass a huge chunk of it by being invisible, and the enemies won't come after you. However, the mirror obviously doesn't last too long, and because of this, you have to then use the stopwatch, or at least time it at a perfect time, which is what I failed to do the first time because I ended up using it way too early, and all the car guards came back to slaughter me, especially the two at the end, which are 2 hard car guards. Luckily, I managed to time it better the second time, and I was able to go through without getting any more damage, although I was basically on a sliver of health by this point. By which point, I'm on the next, or the third to last level. This is it, kids. We are almost there. We are almost completed the game. Mostly knife only. Luckily, this level isn't too bad. Ascension basically allows you to throw the knife at car guards at very good or particular angles. With the hard car guards being dominant in this area, you'd think it'd be hard, but luckily it isn't. You can throw the knife at certain areas and just hit the car guards where they can't hit you back. There is one section which I thought was going to be very scary, and this was during the ribcage section where there's a bunch of car guards coming after you, but once again, the car guards end up infighting and killing each other, which made life a hell of a lot easier for me when I had to take out the last 2. The toughest section in this level was, in fact, where you had to fight a few blue drums and one of the Jabba spawn. This section was really annoying because the blue drums took out a lot of health, mainly because there's 3 of them at the same time, and there was imps that kept spawning in, and that was just even more annoying, just having to deal with the imps who just kept coming in every so often. Of course, then you had to fight the Jabba spawn, but luckily the Jabba spawn was trapped in its little area where I was able to kill it. I then went through the little brickwork area where there's a bunch of car guards, but luckily the car guards are easy to kill. Once again, you can just hide in a little area below or above and just throw the knife at them where they can't hit you back. Because there's so many objects in the way, the heart projectiles end up blowing up into those objects, which makes life a little bit easier for you. Finally, we get to the bridge to the doors of the castle. This bit can be a little bit tricky at first because there are 2 car guards coming towards you, but luckily you can bypass these 2 car guards, run straight to the door, and quickly use the stopwatch. By using the stopwatch, you can just race through the end and finish the level. Nice little easy level. Now we're on to the second to last level. We have to now face the Queen of Hearts, but before we can do that, we now have to do this one section where we have to basically throw a knife at a bunch of pictures, but before we can do that, we have to face a bunch of car guards. Before you begin the level, there are 2 heart car guards which can be really annoying. These 2 car guards can attack you straight away if you trigger them, and well, you're gonna have to kill them. Luckily, there is this pillar which you can run around and throw the knife at. Then you go into the room where you have to move the mirror about and basically get the logos or the portraits to show you the logo to throw the knife at for the doorways above, and this has a bunch of car guards. Luckily, as long as you kill them off one by one, it's a pretty easy section. However, there is one little problem. The hard car guards in the main room will constantly respawn, and these guys can be really annoying. As long as you just run around the pillar, you can hopefully then kill them off as easy as that, but unfortunately, with 2 coming after you, it can be a little bit annoying. Luckily, when they fire their projectiles, it can in fact cause splash damage, which then hurts themselves, which can actually make things a lot more easier if that's the case. As soon as you did that section, you can now face the Queen of Hearts. The first phase of the Queen of Hearts is relatively easy. In fact, I did die a few times, admittedly, but that's only because of certain attacks that she does. See, the first phase of the Queen of Hearts, she will throw you about if she catches you and you're too slow to run away from the telekinetic attack, or she can freeze you, which is also very easy to avoid. In fact, that's probably the easiest to avoid. Or she can use this tentacle attack, which is very hard to avoid and can be really damaging if she gets you, or she can just basically fire projectiles at you, which is kind of damaging if it's laser attack, but if it's not, then it's very damaging. This fight is pretty easy. As long as you do a figure eight around the pillars, you can eventually just throw the knife at her. Every so often you will hear her moan, which is an indication that she's taken too much damage. Eventually she'll slow down and be more easier to hit, which is thankful for me because of how small her hitbox was, and eventually you can just finish her off by throwing her a few more knives and she finally goes down, by which point you face the Heart of Darkness. The Heart of Darkness. Now, the Heart of Darkness took ages. You can even see my full video on it. It just took ages. One of the main reasons why was because of my own stupidity. I kept jumping at really awkward moments and ended up falling to my death, or she would hit me in such a way that ended up making me go flying off the arena or just die. You know, there is the other one where I just died. The Heart of Darkness, you have to primarily aim for the tentacles. Now, you may think that's a bit strange because it's just this big blob in front of you, but here's the thing. The Heart of Darkness uses these tentacles to attack you. Each tentacle has its own power move in a way, and the middle uses a boo jump scream as well as these projectiles at you, which can be homing or they can just blow you to smithereens. The Heart of Darkness fight with knife only was a long fight, to say the very least, because she takes so much damage, so much hit points, I should say, and the tentacles are annoying to avoid. There's one that can bash you to submission, there's one that can transform it into different attacks or different heads of the former bosses you face, such as the Centipede, the Mad Hatter, or the Jabberwock. Centipede and the Jabberwock aren't too bad. The Mad Hatter one, on the other hand, is genuinely annoying because it has these homing missiles essentially, and it's just annoying to get hit by those things. It's usually pretty obvious when you've damaged one of the tentacles because there'll be a large gushing sound of blood, and the blood will start pouring out relentlessly out of one of the tentacles, which will hang limply. As soon as you take out most of the tentacles, she will then be resorted to less attacks, which is easier for you and harder for her, or it, or whatever the hell you want to call this thing. But nonetheless, this fight could still drag on because unfortunately she can still use the ban she scream, or the boo jump scream I should say, or use the hard guard homing heart attacks, which is really annoying. Luckily, however, once again, here comes something called splash damage, because it turns out the homing missiles that the Heart of Darkness fires at you, they actually go right around the arena and hit her in return. So in other words, she can hit herself and cause damage to herself, which makes life a hell of a lot easier for you, and in some cases actually destroyed some of the tentacles she had on her, and it was really a relief seeing this happen. So in other words, the knife, whilst you use it to cause primarily damage, she can also damage herself, which makes things a little bit easier with this boss fight. After so many fails and obviously stupid deaths along the way, I eventually killed the Heart of Darkness, and as such, I finished the game, mostly knife only. I am sure that it is possible to do this game knife only. After all, the Jabberwock can go down in knife only, but because of how hard that boss fight was, I basically gave up on that one. Nonetheless, I managed to do it. I managed to do the game mostly knife only, and it was a painful experience. It was a painful experience, and I don't think I will do it again. It was horrible. It was truly horrible. But nonetheless, I hope you enjoyed this little commentary over how I did a knife-only challenge on American McGee's. Who knows, you might do the same yourself. Who knows, I might do a card-only next time. I don't know. But regardless, this is a horrible challenge, but I did it. I finally did it, and I'm glad about that.